So now let's talk about the freeze frame technique. What is it, this freeze frame technique? The freeze frame technique is a multi-purpose technique for stopping energy draining and gaining clarity. Of course, by accessing more of our intuitive intelligence that we have been talking in the past. Now, what is this freeze frame technique? As its name says, the freeze frame technique freezes the frame of our internal movie. It allows to stop these automatic programs in certain ways. When you use this freeze frame technique, you might be able to see the situation more objectively. Since you're not in the automatic pilot, you will access a wider range of intelligence, and of course, this would improve your mental functions. Now, another good thing about this freeze frame technique is that it will help you balance your emotional and your mental energy. When you do this, you gain more clarity and you become more creative. You come up with more innovative solutions. So this technique requires for you to follow 5 very simple steps. And what we're going to do is that I'm going to take you through these 5 simple steps in order for you to understand what this freeze frame technique is about. And after that, we're going to go through this technique and you're going to practice it in order for you to know how does this technique is experienced in your body. How does that sound? Is that okay? Yes? Great. So let's go with step number 1. The first step for this technique is to acknowledge the problem or the issue, but including any attitudes or feelings that you have about it. When you start practicing this technique, it's important for you to think in a simple situation that you want to address. Don't go on to a very complex problem in your life the first time you practice this kind of technique. When you start practicing, you get more into it, and then you can repeat and repeat the technique as many times as you want in order to go deeper into some kind of problem to gain solution. But for this specific moment, I would encourage you to think in this technique for some simple problems or issues and allow yourself to acknowledge what are your attitudes and your feelings about this issue. For example, when you're planning something, or when you're prioritizing or looking for a creating idea in certain project. Sometimes when you're facing something and you don't really know what's the question you should use. So this technique might help you to identify the most important question or issue that you have to address. And it's very important in this first step to not think only in the problem, but think in how you feel towards that problems. What are your attitudes toward that problem? Okay, so this will be the step number 1, to know what are you gonna work with this technique for, okay? Now, step number 2, well, it has to do with all that we've been talking about, our research. It's very important to find a coherent state in order to start transforming or changing a situation. So for step number 2, you will have to focus your attention on the area of the heart or the area of the chest. You will imagine breath flowing in, the breath is flowing in and out from your heart. And you're going to breathe a little slower and a little deeper than usual. You'll find an easy rhythm that's comfortable to you. In this step number 2, it's very important for you to take your time, the time that you need in order to really find this heart coherent state where you place your attention in the area of the heart and begin breathing in a lower and lower pace until you find your own rhythm. This step, what does is that allows you to shift It's the process of beginning to shift into a heart coherent state. So it's very important for you to take your time and really feel that you're shifting this state of yours. Now, when you are in this state and when you're starting to get into this state, then we go to step number 3. For step number 3, we're going to add a renewing feeling towards the situation that you're addressing. You're going to make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling such as appreciation or, for example, care for someone or something in your life. These feelings, these regenerative feelings, allow you to go even deeper into this coherent state. So activating a new renewing feeling will allow you to access to this intuitive intelligence because you're shifting your emotional state. And you will be able to start to think out of the box because you're gonna get into this coherent state that allows you to have enough energy and to plug the energy links. So in this step, instead of judging or blaming or feeling frustrated about this problem or issue that for certain worries you, then will allow you to start to see it in a very different way. Instead of connecting to these judgmental emotions, you will try to connect to these elevated emotions, such as appreciation or care for someone, and that will help you shift your emotional state. Now, when you are in this state, you are more coherent, and it's the perfect timing to start to revisit the problem or issue that you started thinking about because you are in a complete different state. So after we go from step number 3, we can go to step number 4 because you're in a different coherent state. And in step number 4, you're in a more objective place. So you can go into the problem, but ask yourself, what would be a more effective or efficient attitude, action, or solution? You're going to make this question from the same problem, but with a more objective mind, because you are in a total different step. So in this step number 4, you will be more aligned with your intuitive intelligence, and you will just start to be open to what information is going to come. Because in step number 4, you just make the question, you ask yourself. But in step number 5, that's the last step of this technique, now that you make the question, then you quietly observe what information can come to you. In step number 5, you observe subtle changes in your perceptions, in your attitudes, in your feelings, and you commit to sustaining beneficial attitude shifts and acting on new insight. In this step, is very important for you not to go and seek for the answer. You are already in this perfect coherent state, and you made the perfect question in order for the answer come to you. So you just have to observe and stay quietly feeling and sensing any subtle changes that you start to have in your feelings, in your perceptions, and in your actions. Now, something that's very important, it's not to rush up. If you don't think that you have any insight or any new information, it doesn't matter. You are starting to shift into a more coherent state, and the answers will come later. The most important here for you is to remember shifting how you feel about that issue. Because if you change the way you feel about the issue, you will see different possibilities for it, even if it's not in that exact moment. And you may have an insight pop after you finish this technique. And you can repeat the freeze frame technique anytime you like in order for you to gain this solution that you're searching for. So these are the 5 different steps that allow you to go into this intuitive intelligence. They are not really very hard to remember. Now, will you be willing to practice this technique? Now that you know the theory and that you know that first you have to acknowledge the problem and the feelings towards the problem, then you have to focus your attention on the heart and imagine your breath is flowing in and out in a very slow and deeper way than usual in order to find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. You begin to connect to that coherent state and you make a sincere attempt to experience another regenerative feeling. Then you ask yourself from a more objective place, what will be a more efficient or effective solution towards that issue? And finally, step number 5 is just quietly observe what subtle changes you have in your feelings or ideas or insights that you get. Those are the 5 simple steps. Don't worry, I will let you through it. You'll just have to follow my lead and relax and try to practice this with a real example of yourselves. Would you agree to do that? Are you willing to start and practice this freeze frame technique? Great, awesome. So let's start with step number 1, okay? I will give you a couple of minutes to now really think and acknowledge what's the problem or issue that you want to address. Remember, it's very important for you to think in the feelings and attitudes that you have towards that situation or that problem, okay? So take a couple of minutes and write down what would that problem be and what would be the feelings and attitudes. Good? Great. Okay, now relax yourself, sit yourself comfortable, and if you want to close your eyes or keep your eyes open, let's try to focus on step number 2. I will ask you to focus your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out from your heart or chest area. Breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. And stay there for a while. Remember to find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. If you notice your mind is wandering or you hear any mind chatter, simply refocus on the heart area and breathe slower and deeper. Now, make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life, and connect to this feeling. Now that you're in this coherent state and you're in a more objective place, ask yourself, what would be a more efficient or effective attitude, action, or solution towards this issue that you're trying to address? And quietly observe any subtle changes in perceptions, in attitudes, or in feelings. Commit to sustaining beneficial attitude shifts and just observe what answers do you receive. How was that? How was your experience? What did you feel? What did you realize? What was your experience with this technique? Did you have an insight? Did you get to know or observe something about you that you haven't observed and that now it's the answer for this issue or problem? Yes? Okay. Wow, awesome. Great, so you did have a new answer and you feel different about that issue. Now, remember that if you didn't receive in this exact moment any insight about how to solve this issue or problem, it doesn't matter. You can repeat this technique anytime you want. You acknowledge the problem. You go to a hard focused breathing. You activate a positive feeling. You ask yourself for a different answer and you just observe and act. So each time you want to go and access this intuitive intelligence, you just have to go through these 5 easy steps and observe, let go, and see what happens.